Okay, so this is kind of the reason why I brought this game up in concept here. Constantina. So right now it should be pretty well baselined. I'm right off the bottom. And just the heart rate right now because I wanted to level it off to kind of show you what I'm talking about. Right now it's just 1%. Whatever fluffery's coming on there, nothing much. We're going to consider it 0. That's what that is. One of the ways you should look at this, I kind of get this clip like, let's go way back towards, well, there's got to be different logarithms of like, am I a very fast-paced person? Am I very comprehensive about how hard I'm pushing to smooth out this equation? Because you're going to need extra variables. Those extra variables will help you in a few different places. One, off of the prime binary choice off of the beginning, roughly you start them in the same way, and there's also a third. If you tap the equation in itself, it does something equivalent to x and equivalent to dt by the amount. Now, whether you buy them or whether you click them, or whether one of the variables, all the variables go to the monetary side, the what would be Newton meters comparatively to the upgrades, what are coulons, and how those factors work with each other, not directly. Remember, we're in this binary, not binary. There's a third phase to the way that wire works. So one of the techniques you could do is, again, I'm just kind of baseline right now. Let me give a quick look. You might have to tap this part a couple times because it doesn't have an algorithm for it. You'll need to make one. 500, 1,000. Figure out what's a sensible timeline. I count out 30 seconds while I'm tapping, and that's real close to about 1,000 with 4 tappers going at it at once, just hammering out here. But the point is that is an algorithm. That is X roughly. Now it doesn't tell you a count, and you have these random numbers with bandwidths to look at. And when you end this game, there's a little guy down there. He'll light up, and that's the only way you know that you crossed the line, other than what rough value that FT may be at. And again, when I said I first did that, I was running through the combinations and I was smashing them all to the point where the value was, but I was still hitting real close to the same timeline after I stripped it away, and I didn't need to. Where you could close it off on just productivity over that line without exponentially breaking through the ceiling. That timeline is super tight, and it plateaus off at the top in the same way, where it starts to get volatile, and you'll actually need the organization of things like V, W, S, Z, Y in coordination, in organization, depending on how you originally started it. Now, remember how I said you got to log this stuff? That's a pretty hard thing to talk about. When one hand's holding it, this is doing that, and you'd have to write that down. That's real hard. But that's basically what your brain is doing. You're remembering these small patterns. So I would remember the very hard ones, right? Either my main line, where I would just smash through on max on everything and keep it as volatile as possible. That's your baseline. Your game, improve it. F parentheses T plus DT equals Fx times E. That is exactly what this equation is doing, and it's what it's trying to model as it's doing to it. Now, it's a little bit complicated because this is increasing roughly about, when you get to the number, when you see the number that does one extra number, will be like 20, 21. The next one will be 22, 23. A lot like the way 12 to 13 in this pattern works, and how that all grows exponentially. Now, you may not want to do that. Like I said, sometimes it's better not to just smash through all of them. Play with the upgrades and the variables before you even upgrade anything, any level, if you wanted a smoother line. Then there's combinations of logs, right? Log 10, combinations of logs at phases that you might need to orientate in a line because of that compression, expansion. That's why it would change. When you have a physical delay between the finger touchy, even the bus driver to a certain degree, the combinations of choices when you get back to town. That's one of the variables. The stone mill is a hard line when I think about which log variation I want to do because the costs are already done. Then log pattern on this means that, but it might exponentially collapse at some time because that logarithm needs to be adjusted, not the entirety of the stone mill or the marshmallow factory, if that makes sense. The button here where DT changes over, in this case oil, would need to be some money system that equivalents, but it can't, and it never could, because you would at least need what the prime value is for having to have cars. So again, having cars becomes the first X variable. That's where you want to try to hold a 45. Whatever rough average compression, maybe sales, maybe not sales, maybe the volatility within that is what your X is. So you got to figure out what physically does it, not listen to the mathematics, right? Experimental can be wrong if the recipe, I hate to admit Purdue there in one of their videos for the kids, the one I watched, about try a different vinegar baking soda recipe because the parts may not be right. Hey, you never know. YBCO on the internet with Nile Red is another good example of you might have to do a little bit of trial and error. Oh yeah, atomic layer deposition guy. I like him too. When you're logging and you would have some insight about what that information might do, it's going to help you radically improve your result where the volatility actually plays in the atomic layer deposition, where there's a problem in the process with that smoothness, and that's actually what it looks like. I hope that makes sense to you. It doesn't really help you much pull out oil. There's nothing I could done about that. It would be in a pretty rocky situation where usually the button you press there is arrangements of time. And, it's hard because inside of there, you're going to, in some equations when I was running it, it was almost like this rocket fuel, the way this thing ramped up, that I could let it go. Even though it's not going to hit the phase limit to the end of the game, that could be arbitrary to things in this constantly stacking. But in life, you just want the projection to be the bandwidth. Hold that 45 or even something. I just got to creep an angle, and I don't want that angle to have any dips, bips, clicks, or anything. I can handle a little bit of a curve inside of those. That you can easily make them. I'm not exactly sure the pattern of it right now, but I'm sure we could hit again real short order from your initial starts. Well, in initial starts, it'll teach you what you need to know about which one of those alternating patterns, short of trial and error, that in your case would collapse without any mainline momentum behind it. And that's my case. I don't know. I mean, some of you people would play with just this big push that does, and then what happens? That DT starts to crank over on you and she pounds down. It happened to me a couple times when I was trying to maintain the smoothness on that. Then there's other ones where I rocked it the whole scale, and I might have had very even increments of a very short heads and parallels across that 45, and maybe a couple where they were up, not down within the standards. And I know that's what that combination is, and usually I read inverted to it when I get a lot of that from the Peacock. So
Verizon is going ultra with 5G ultra wideband in many more cities. Mindy, with up to 10 times faster speeds, she can download a movie in minutes or a song in seconds.
Yep.
Verizon is going ultra, so you can do more.
So we received a request from Gazprom about the payment conditions, and we are analyzing those at the moment.